We'll go on 1. 3, 2, 1.
No.
Why does anyone ever go on 1? Right, that doesn't make any sense.
3,
2, 1, then go.
We go on 2.
We'll go on 7. 3, 2, 16, 7. Oh. We'll go on after 1.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Smith was out for me.
Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with 2 names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all 3 of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
He desperately needs her to survive.
It sort of handled some incredibly delicate topics incredibly well.
I will never watch this again. What was that?
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar.
I'm James Smith.
Let me just go and change my shirt.
All right. Hello and welcome back to Off Radar Series 3. We hope you are all doing well. My name is James Smith and I am joined by James Douglas Eatock.
Hello. Or middle name. We're on a middle name basis.
Can we do that? I don't know.
It's allowed.
Okay.
It's done.
He's going to get done over by some fraud person now. Yeah. They know all his details.
Oh man, you've done
That's
me
the
a
secret
right
password gone.
You've sold me like a right kipper. Go on.
And Neil Brock.
Hello. I don't have a middle name.
I was going to say.
How rude.
But I was going to say, I'm not sure I know your middle name.
Dustin.
It's Nige.
Dustin, did you say?
No, it's Nige.
It's Neil Nige Brock. How do you not know that?
Neil Nige. Oh, man.
Yeah.
What?
It's not really, but anyway, let's carry on, shall we?
Okay,
let's
fine.
Not bore our listeners anymore.
For the sake of this podcast, we call him Nige, but yeah, there we go. Today, we are talking about a 2017 film called Get Out, which is, I believe, how the director wants you to say it. And this film was recommended by a listener called Chris Kiernan.
Chris Kiernan recommended this.
Yeah.
If you're listening, Chris, what's up? Also, you owe me 20p.
I went to the pub and we were chatting and he recommended I watch it and I thought, well, maybe I'll turn that into one of our podcast episodes. But yeah, I hadn't seen it before. Had you guys seen this film?
I saw it at the cinema when it came out.
I also saw it at the cinema with a person called Colin Blake, who I believe you both know. And yeah, we went and had a lovely time together at the cinema, me and him.
Oh, well, there you go. So, yeah.
Can I just stress, I didn't see it by myself. I wasn't Billy No-Mates. I saw it with my friend Ahmed, who I see all my films with. I do have friends. I wasn't in the cinema by myself. Honestly, I have friends.
I like going to the cinema by myself. Do you not? I actually sometimes prefer it.
I think the only time I ever went to cinema by myself was when I was at the civil service, 1999, August, and I was desperate to see Inspector Gadget, and none of my friends would see it. So I went to see it during the lunch break, and 2 hours of my life I never get back. And I love Inspector Gadget, but dear God, that movie. Oh, and I saw Fight Club by myself at the cinema as well.
At least it was in your lunch break, I guess.
Yeah, it was good. Good 2 hour lunch break.
I was going to say, very long lunch break. No wonder the civil service is in such disarray.
No, I'm just getting all political.
I've only ever been to the cinema by myself when I've done film screenings. So when I was working as a sort of film journalist, occasionally I'd get to go for a freebie and see something. Although very often it was a film that barely ever got actual distribution anywhere. So it was like one of those films where you tell someone about a few years later and they'd be like, no, that film didn't exist. In some cases, even IMDb doesn't believe they do. So
right.
Great, interesting film.
So when I used to work at a cinema, and after work, after doing a 12-hour shift, I used to just go to the cinema on my own because I could watch films for free.
That's awesome.
And it was awesome. It was actually one of my favourite jobs because I basically watched whatever film came out. I remember me and my friend Mikey, who you guys know, we went to the cinema once and watched like 4 films in a day. And
that's the dream.
Didn't even matter. Yeah. Halloween 4 was one of them, though, to be fair.
Oh, okay, that's not the dream.
No, that's not the dream. That's the nightmare.
It's the nightmare.
Talking of nightmares, here's a segue.
This better be
let's talk about
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Let's talk about A Nightmare on Christmas, or whatever it's called. Get Out. So yeah, it is written and directed by Jordan Peele, who he hasn't actually done a lot. I know he's an actor and he's done like quite a few acting roles, but he's not written and directed many films. He did Us, which came after Get Out, and I think he's got another film coming out this year,
which looks fucking, sorry, excuse the French, looks really, the trailer's amazing. Nope. So he's got Get Out, Us, and the next one's coming out is Nope. N-O-P-E. And the trailer for that is just like, I don't know what's going on, but it looks really interesting. But I remember his name popping up from, he was part of this like very, I guess, successful American kind of comedy act. It was like a TV series. I think it was Key and Jordan, or Jordan and Key. Right. And this was his, like, to my knowledge, this was his first movie. So I went in not knowing this was something he contributed to, and even when his name popped up, I probably didn't even register it. It wasn't until afterwards I was like, that's a comedian guy. I never saw Us, but I've heard good things about it. But if you've seen the trailer for Nope, it just looks so like, it's a wonderful trailer because you watch it, you're like, I really want to see this film, and you can tell it's like much like Get Out. There are moments of humour as coupled with like moments of absolute terror and intense feelings. I'm jumping ahead a bit.
You are. And funnily enough, after watching this film, I'm now going to jump ahead very slightly. So I hadn't seen any of these films, didn't know anything about him. So I watched Get Out and then went and watched Us about 3 days later because I was so intrigued. But yeah, maybe we'll come back to that.
Don't spoil it.
Yeah, I've not seen it, so no spoilers.
Yeah, they're all robots.
Just going back to Etok's point about the trailer for Nope. It was actually the trailer for Get Out. He actually fought the studio very hard to make sure certain elements that we'll come on to as we discuss the film, certain spoilers perhaps you would say, were not revealed in that trailer. He was extremely keen for a lot of it to be a surprise. And I was lucky that when I went to see it at the cinema, I knew very little about it, didn't know much about Jordan Peele. And was very much shocked by what happened. And I think since the release of Get Out and, as you say, Us, and he also was involved in the Candyman remake. He also did the Twilight Show remake as well, that's been on TV. He's kind of become this new sort of master of horror, I suppose, following in the footsteps of the likes of John Carpenter and co. in modern American cinema. So this was like his origin, really. And well, we'll get into whether it's a horror, a thriller, or whatever people think it is, but it's certainly an extremely interesting film.
And
definitely.
Yeah, it is. And I guess before we get into that, it stars Daniel Kaluuya. And he's been in loads of stuff, but I mean, personally, I remember first seeing him in a Black Mirror episode.
Black Mirror, yeah.
That's the same. Yeah.
And it's just those big eyes, which again is quite a genius bit of casting when it comes to this film as well.
Perfect.
And then it's also got Allison Williams, who plays his girlfriend Rose in the film. Catherine Keener and
I love a bit of Catherine Keener.
She's brilliant in it.
She's so good.
And Bradley Whitford, who's also
it's interesting, those sort of that cast, like you say, sort of Alison Williams, she was most well known, I would say, for being in Girls, the TV show. Catherine Keener's obviously done a bunch of stuff over the years, worked with some extremely famous people, and I'd say Bradley Whitford's kind of almost like reinvented himself, being in things like A Handmaid's Tale and stuff like that. They've all kind of gone on to do sort of quite prominent things. But yeah,
Commander.
This was, and there's also actually another one that's worth mentioning who plays I'm going to have to do a Smith here and try and pronounce his name. Lakeith Stanfield, who kind of plays someone in this film who is in the opening scene, in fact, and gets abducted during that opening scene, and he plays a character I think called, is it Angus in it? No, it's Andre. It's Andre.
Andre, yes. Yeah.
This guy, he's absolutely fantastic. If you've ever watched the TV show Atlanta, which I highly recommend as well, he's an extremely sort of up-and-coming actor who's been in a lot of different things. I think Black Klansman, I think he's in. Sorry to Bother You, which was really good. Knives Out. He's really becoming this huge name within Hollywood. I think it was actually Judas and the Black Messiah rather than Black Klansman, but he's a really strong actor, and I think even in this film, in his sort of short bit within it, he comes across really well, because he has to kind of play a character that is initially one thing and then something completely different when he comes back later on.
Yeah.
That kind of brings us quite nicely onto the beginning of the film and the plot. So Nigel, I wonder if you would mind giving us a rough synopsis of Get Out for maybe anyone who hasn't seen it.
So, Get Out starts with a character called Chris Washington. He's a black photographer from Brooklyn in New York, and he has a white girlfriend called Rose Armitage. And it's basically those guys going to see her parents. So, he's left his dog with his best mate, this guy who works for the TSA, which is like the American version of the people who do all the airport security. And whilst they're driving to her parents' house, they actually hit a deer, and it's quite traumatic, and there's this like immediate tension. With death and something dying on the side of the road, and it kind of is later revealed that actually Chris's mother had died in a hit and run accident, which is kind of prominent within the later plot. But anyway, it's your classic guy goes to meet family. You're a bit concerned that they're a loving relationship. Everything seems nice. They try and be really welcoming, but it's obviously a bit of a fish out of water story, which we seem to love on this podcast. We love a fish out of water.
We love a fish out of water.
But Chris kind of meets the family, and like the parents are a little bit overbearing, but they're fair enough, and the brother's a little bit creepy, but again his girlfriend's super supportive, and everyone seems really nice.
Do they know I'm black?
No. Should they?
It seems like something you might wanna, mention.
Mom and Dad, my black boyfriend will be coming up this weekend, and I just don't want you to be shocked that he's a black man.
They have a couple of people working at the house that are both also black, but they behave really strangely, and it's again a little bit jarring. You're thinking, well, this is a bit unusual. Again, this guy coming into this situation. And from that point, there's also this big party where loads of the Armitage's friends come to basically hang out in the garden, but they all take this really, really heavy interest in Chris Washington.
Call me Dean and you hug me, my man.
So how long has this been going on, this thing? We hired Georgina and Walter to help care for my parents. When they died, I couldn't bear to let them go.
At this party, he also meets Andre, this other guy who, at the very start of the film, we see in this white affluent neighborhood suddenly get sort of clocked out of nowhere and kidnapped, and then we see him later in this film. But he's really weird. Like Chris goes up to him and is like, "Oh, it's nice to see another brother in this situation," and he's very sort of polite and proper and doesn't really know how to act. It's only after he tries to take a sneaky little photo of this guy and the flash goes off that Andre starts screaming at him, "Get out, get out," and almost attacks him. And you think, wow, does this guy really hate Chris? What the hell is going on?
Get out. Sorry, man.
Okay.
Get out! Yo! Yeah! Yo, chill, man. Get out! Chill! Chill, man! We're gonna chill! Get the fuck out of here!
Basically, it's a few twists and turns. He gets hypnotized by the mother of the family and goes through that trauma of his mother dying in a road accident, and he sort of falls into this place which is known as, what is it known as? Like the dark place,
sunken place, I think.
The sunken place, yeah.
The sunken place where he feels completely helpless.
Now, sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
Right from the opening shot, I wrote down in my notes, like the opening is so well shot. You get that single shot, the car passes by, goes out of focus, and then it turns around, and you're like, oh boy. And then, but like when you're following the adventure of Chris and Rose, going to meet her parents, it's kind of very cleverly done. You kind of forget about the initial Andre abduction. You just like, that was a scene that happens. I'm sure that's going to play into the film, but now you're following this story about this seemingly well-adjusted, well-grounded couple that are very open, talking about the fact that they're a mixed-race couple. Even when they go to the parents, the dad is like, look, I know what you're thinking. We've got the two black people, so, what do you say? Working, serving our every
servants,
whim.
I suppose.
Servants, yeah, two black servants. Like very much the help is what they would have called it back in the day. I remember watching it at the cinema and thinking, this feels like a throwback to old America. Like, Colonel Sanders kind of,
the old South.
Yeah, the old South. There you go, the old South. But the parents are portrayed in such a way that you're like, well, this is clearly not the old South. So these black individuals, it sounds crazy, want to be the help. Clearly they do, because why would they be there? They seem to get on really well with them. There's an air of unease, but they seem, everybody seems to get on well. And if you remember the scene when the cars pull up and these guests are all getting out, all these, as nice and affluent, like white guests, the help are like hugging them and seem very like chummy. And it's like, wow, these... Yeah, the help, as it were, seem very very well connected. They're not treated like servants.
It's all very awkward and uneasy, but yeah, exactly. It feels kind of like they're just trying too hard to please like the new guest who happens to be black. Even in the scene just before when they're at home with the dog and stuff, it's all like you say, it feels really fluffy and like light. It's almost like a kind of like love story kind of music video, the way it's shot. And then when they hit the deer, when the white cop, I think it's quite a key scene actually, because he goes and kind of like, they've just hit a deer, but he insists on
getting the license
on Chris's license, and she's like, he didn't do it, why do you want his license? And he's like, I want his license. And she sticks up for him, and you're like, wow, well, first of all, what a great girlfriend, she's sticking up for him. And
it's not her first time defending her black boyfriend from police.
Exactly.
You can see, and it's like, so
she
immediately
comes across lovely.
You're drawn into this thing where you just immediately go, it sounds terrible, oh, she's one of the good white women, in terms of in that relationship. She's clearly, she's faced this before, and she's more offended by it than he is. He's just like, yeah, like, you can have a look at my license. And she's like, no, why should he have to? They're both right. It's just like, he's just like, yeah, I'll do what you say. Whereas she's also like, you don't have to. I don't see why this is a thing. So they really draw you in, because obviously we haven't spoiled it yet. For anybody who's listening, if you haven't seen this film, go and watch it, because you're doing yourself a disservice by listening three Muppets talk about it initially. listen, come back and listen to us afterwards. But they really draw you into this well-adjusted family, because there's an air of unease, but at the same time, like I say, that's that line when the dad goes, look, I know what you're thinking, the black help, etc., etc. So it's like they're addressing it, so they know it's kind of a bit outdated, but okay, everybody seems to be on the same page here. And then it is very much...
He says as well, doesn't he? Like, I would have voted for Obama for a third term.
That's right, yes.
It's kind of like trying to, like,
heavy-handed,
almost overdo it. Yeah. There's so many bits on the first viewing that you would just miss. And then when you see it for the second time, having kind of seen how things play out, you're like, oh my God, wow, that's unbelievable. How
very much like Fight Club. It's one of those where you watch it once, watch it a second time, you're like, oh.
Well, even with the deer bit, there's a line which I did remember. I've only seen it once, so I'm actually, now you're saying that, I want to watch it again. But the dad, they hit the deer on the way over, and then the dad says something along the lines of, "Oh, these deers are taking over," which is obviously a massive kind of undertone for what his real thoughts are. But yeah, and then this family, the mum and dad are quite nice to begin with, but I mean, like, what you do realise is the brother is like an unhinged nutter when you first meet him, and he's like almost challenges Chris to like a fight in this dinner scene, and Rose has to like kind of stick up for him. But then the other thing is the help. They're dressed in old-fashioned clothes, and their hair is like, it's basically going back 100 years. Like, it looks, let's not beat around it now, it looks like, modern day slavery, the way they're kind of dressed and the way they are kind of politely helping out their, the people there. Sorry, my voice is I just went there.
Come on, Grandpa.
Yeah, it's the stag do at the weekend. They're helping out the family, but they're talking very politely and very, very like middle class white people would.
I didn't get to meet you, actually, up close. I'm Chris.
I know who you are. She is lovely, isn't she?
Rose? Yeah, she is.
One of a kind? Top of the line? A real doggone keeper?
Well, that's the beauty of when we see Andre is he's not dressed like we saw him at the start of the movie. And obviously we know it's him. It's like, oh, it's clearly Andre. But why is he acting so aloof and weird and like, oh, I think you might have me confused with someone else. It's a very outdated way of even speaking, regardless of race. He's talking in a very outdated, just conversation. It's obviously he's trying not to slip up, but the way he's using phrases is like someone who would probably be in their 80s or 90s. You know what I mean? Who would live through
Andy's married
things.
to a much older white woman as well, isn't he? And sort of when Chris is chatting to him, he goes for like a fist bump and he just doesn't know what to do and just kind of grabs it like a weird handshake fist bump.
Good to see another brother around here.
Yes, of course it is.
I guess you kind of mentioned the hypnotizing, hypnotist scene, which is one of the most brilliant kind of moments in the film, in my opinion. And she gets a teacup and she starts kind of, like gently.
With the silver spoon.
Yes, yeah. Oh, very good, very good. I did not notice that.
I was going to say, there's one thing about that scene in the cinema where I kind of burst out laughing. Because I was watching this scene, she's doing the hypnotism. I'm sure it's like a tried and true hypnotism method where you stir the tea and you look at the person while you're stirring the tea. There's an episode of D'Artagnan and the Three Muskehounds where the character Milady hypnotises D'Artagnan, and it's shot, I'm not joking, exactly the same. He doesn't go into the sunken well, but it's that thing where she's looking at him and she's stirring slowly, and at first he's like, yeah, and then he just becomes absolutely entranced. So I'm sitting there watching it going, I tell him, I go, it's like an episode of D'Artagnan. He's like, what?
That is not what I expected to hear today.
No, I did not, but maybe that's got weird undertones as well. Hey, but yeah, and then Chris kind of sinks into this like other world almost, and you can see him like drifting back from his eyes, and even the way with the screen, the way it's kind of shot, it's kind of almost like a letterbox. He's like looking through a letterbox, and she's like echoey, and it's a really powerful and kind of, I say lovely, but it's not. It's terrifying moment. His eyes are wide and he's stuck, but you, as the viewer, are stuck with him there. You're in that sunken place.
Now you're in the sunken place.
And then, in kind of a horror thriller kind of way, he wakes up and, like he thinks, oh, I must have been dreaming or whatever, which is a tried and tested technique, but kind of needed. And then,
but they do confirm that he was hypnotized, like because he doesn't, no longer
quite quickly after, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Which is unlike that normal scenario, I would say, in film.
There's also a really important bit where he sees Georgina a couple of times, who is like the housekeeper, and she's really freaky. And actually, as the viewer, you're not kind of you're scared of her. You don't want to get to know this character at all. She's terrifying and freaky, and it's really clever because you're scared of the ominous black maid. That's what they make you think. But anyway, he talks to her at some point, and she just starts kind of crying.
There's like a tear.
Yeah, there's a tear, and
that's the scene when about the telltale, and she's accidentally unplugged his phone, which it later becomes it was no accident kind of thing. Yeah, and she's like, no, and she's just crying that single tear, and it's extraordinarily freaky, I would say. And again, like you're in this well-lit room in this lovely sort of big house, manor house type thing with huge gardens. Nothing seems threatening at all, and yet you've got this housekeeper just staring you down, crying a single tear with the craziest Joker-esque grin on her face, and you're just thinking, what is going on here? None of this makes any sense.
Oh no.
Well, just one thing we haven't sort of commented upon is the fact that we sort of mentioned like the fact that she is a hypnotherapist, so the mother of the family. The father of the family is a neurosurgeon. So again, you've got one who physically affects the mind and one who mentally affects the mind. And obviously this has a huge bearing on the fact we've obviously met this Andre character whose mind has clearly changed. He's no longer the person he once was. So how does this tie into Chris and Rose and the entire relationship? Well, it ties in a pretty bizarre, unbelievable way, which one of us is going to have to finally tell our listeners, I suppose.
You do
so this is your final chance to go away and watch this film.
Yeah,
please,
spoiler.
If you've not watched this film, do so before we carry on talking. Looking at you here, Etok.
I'm trying to figure out how to best break it down. So the reason there's this, the reason why all the, I'm going to keep using the word affluent because Smith put it in my brain, or one of you did, the affluent white people turning up to this big house is because they're bidding. We find out that they're bidding on Chris because they've all had a good feel and they're like, okay. And why are they bidding on him? Well, it's connected to the Andre situation and the help.
And we should mention, with Andre, we know that he has changed. Obviously, as the viewer, we've already seen it.
Yeah, we've already
seen it. The characters know as well, because Chris texts his friend, the TSA guy we mentioned earlier, with a photo. And he's like, oh, I know that guy. That's Andre, this guy I know who was in Brooklyn. He's been missing for 6 months. What the hell is he doing there? He's like a classic Brooklyn sort of boy, really.
Yeah.
Like, he shouldn't be in this scenario ever. So both the characters and the viewer know at this stage something has happened to Andre. And as you say, now we're in a situation where these old people are essentially bidding on sort of, and again, you're sort of going back to the slave trade and stuff like that, where they literally went to these events and bid on people. Now, what are they bidding on him for? Like, they know that he's a great photographer. What's so special about him? They know that he's virile and he's strong and everything else. So, Ito, what is going on?
Oh man, you keep throwing to. They're basically, so what these crafty old people are doing is bidding on his physical form, because the father and the mother have figured out a way to push the consciousness of, let's use Andre as an example. So what's happened to Andre is his consciousness has been pushed to the back. The mind of an old white man has been put into the mind of Andre. So Andre's, am I saying this right? So Andre's mind is at the back, and at the forefront is the consciousness of this old white man who was on his deathbed. And I'm sure there's like a not proper, but like a scientific reason they put in the movie. Basically, brain transfer. It's that simple. They're brain transferring, and so Andre is now inhabited primarily by an old white man who is using this young, virile, strong black body as his vessel. Oh, vessel, that's a good word.
That's a great word. And I think Georgina is like the grandma of...
That's right, they're both the grandparents of and Rose.
Yeah. Well,
the grandfather as well is someone who lost to Jesse Owens at the 1934 Berlin Olympics, and when he sees him, he's just like, when he goes out for his cigarette break,
terrifying image.
This old man is just charging around like the garden. You're thinking, what on earth is going on? He is so bitter that he lost to Jesse Owens, and he's got this hatred of black people that he still is sort of trying to compete and trying to run and try and basically get his revenge. And it's the whole thing's kind of like the Holy Grail. It's the sort of quest for everlasting life, and the Armitages, through their sort of mental and sort of surgical means, have figured out a way to do this. And essentially Chris has been ensnared into this trap somehow, but the way in which he was done was brought in. It's so one of the most incredible transformations of a character I've ever seen in
It's
cinema.
also one, I remember in the cinema, no word of lie, when that reveal happens, all of us in the cinema were like, you heard this collective like, oh no, because up until that point we're thinking, oh right, these people are horrible, but Rose doesn't know what's going on. So Rose and Chris need to get the fuck out of Dodge. They need to get out of there, right? They need to get out. There you go. They need to get out.
That's how he came up with it.
I see what you've done there.
I see what I did there. But it's but yeah, he goes. I can't remember what he's doing, but he's going through her cupboard and he's going through this shoebox, and he sees all these photos, and it's such a great reveal. You just see all these photos of her with different black guys, and then one of the black guys in the photo is Andre, and you're like, I mean, up until you kind of get it anyway when he starts going through 3 or 4 photos. It's like, okay, so she's dated a lot of black guys. It's like, oh no, wait, she's dated a lot of guys.
Yeah, and she's told him as well that he's the first black guy she's ever dated as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, the cinema just... In the cinema, we just kind of gasped, because also throughout, up until that point, he's confiding in her so much. So she's obviously hearing this and thinking, like, we need to act quickly because he's gonna bolt if we don't get him fast. And there's that great scene. I may be jumping ahead there in the plot, but when he's about to leave and he can't open the front door, and he's like, "Can someone give me the keys?" And she just goes,
she's looking for the keys in her bag.
Yeah, she's like, "I can't find the keys," and he's like, "Rose,
she's stressing out.
give me the keys."
I'm trying. And
then she just and then vump, she just changes and goes, "I can't give you the keys."
Rose, give me those keys. Rose, give me those keys. Rose, now, the keys.
Oh, be careful, bro.
What the fuck?
Where are those keys, Rose?
You know I can't give you the keys, right, babe?
Oh my god!
And then all of a sudden, at that point, the film,
it's heartbreaking.
I mean, it is heartbreaking. Like you say, you're like, this whole film is built on these two. Like, you're so invested in their relationship and their trust, and exactly, you're in their relationship with them. At that moment, not only do you lose that, but the film suddenly switches into a totally different film. It becomes a bit of a slasher kind of movie, and it kind of has the big ending that it probably needs. But I mean, I personally like that middle part of the film where he's figuring stuff out. It's so well done, where he's seeing Georgina and Walter, that one of the other people that are kind of enslaved in their minds as well as enslaved physically. So many very deep and meaningful kind of like looks at modern day slavery and how it's not just people being slaves in the old way, that actually you can it's a really, really clever way of looking at a massive issue that is still ongoing. So yeah, it was a real surprise, this film.
I'm not sorry, so I just want to jump back a little bit. I was going to say, I'm not justifying the means of the baddies in this film, but I love that there is reason. It's not just immortality. From the old guy that wants Chris's body, who we know from Dodgeball, it's our old guy.
Yeah,
it's the guy from Office Space and Dodgeball, isn't it? The old fat guy, and he's basically blind, and he wants to see it. Yeah, Stephen Root, and he's just like, he wants the idea of being able to see again, not only being able to see, but being virile and young and strong again.
And who's better eyes than a great photographer as well? So again,
because he talks about he's a fan of his photos. It's not like but you're but he kind of explains that. And again, when you first meet his character,
you like him, don't you?
It's like, what a sweet old guy. Like, even because he's sat alone, and Chris sits with him, and you're like, oh, these two clearly have he understands where Chris is at this event. It's just sort of like, this guy must feel really awkward and out of place, so I'm going to make him feel comfortable. Then you realise this guy's as evil as the rest of them. It's just, oh my God. I think that you summed it up perfectly, Smith. This whole film, you're invested in these characters, and especially the relationship between Chris and Rose. And then when the rug's pulled out from you, you feel really gutted. Like I said, that scene on the staircase where she's just not going to give up the keys, your heart sinks. You're like, oh no.
It's so tense, isn't it?
Is this film going to have a sad ending? Literally. I
think the other reason you're invested is because he's got so much depth as well. That his mum died when he was a kid, and how often do we see that in a horror thriller? Normally it's just like a girl runs upstairs away from a scary person, but with this, there's a lot of character development, and the fact that we kind of go back to his childhood, that's unexpected as well, and really important in who he becomes in the film, and like the kind of the way he stands up to the ending, if you like.
Well, something sort of in relation to the film itself, I would say for the majority of the film, kind of the build-up, it's kind of like a classic, maybe even like a 70s sort of psychological film, horror film, something more like Rosemary's Baby, for instance.
Yes.
And then the last, say, 20 minutes, half an hour, it's like a Nightmare on Elm Street style slasher, and it comes from nowhere. And it was quite interesting. When I went to the cinema, there was an older couple in the cinema watching the film. And there's a bit where essentially someone's skull is taken off and they're messing around with the brains, and then someone gets stabbed in the throat by some deer antlers, which is sort of quite appropriate given the deer getting killed at the start.
Yeah,
and they just got up and walked out. And there was like 5 or 10 minutes left of the film, and that was it. That was enough for them. It clearly gone so far from one type of film to another.
It does.
They were just completely done with it. And it is shocking. Like it's gory. There's a lot of violence in a very short space of time, which comes from almost nowhere, but it's completely justifiable.
Justified.
The main character, Chris, has gone from being this like really down-to-earth, lovable guy who's sort of in this relationship, gone to meet the parents, and he's literally fighting for his life. And he has to like stamp on someone's head until they're dead, or bludgeon them with this like a ball. And it's just, it is pretty full-on and surprising. Like, I think the psychologist, the hypnotist, she gets like stabbed in the eye. There's some pretty brutal things that suddenly kind of crop up.
It's true actually. I found like, what I don't know if you guys felt this, but I felt frustrated that he couldn't like break free like Georgina and Walter and Andre. You know, like that was the bit which I thought, you know, that was his mission when he first got there. To, you know, I kind of thought he was going to like almost help them, but it felt like that wasn't the purpose, and I felt frustrated by that. But maybe that's just me.
Well, it's tough. Like, there's a lot of literal things where he's tied to a chair. He literally cannot move, in the sense of like, you're just like, please just sort of get up out of there. And the way in which he gets out of it is both ingenious and a bit weird.
I know what you're going to say. Picking cotton.
He picks some cotton out, and obviously picking cotton, and they use that symbolism. It's also like the way his hands are tied. There's no way he could have been able to do it. Like, I remember watching it at the time and thinking they've just kind of put this in because he obviously needs a way to escape. Because basically he puts cotton in his ears so he doesn't hear the sort of hypnotist's voice, so he's not still in the I can't remember what we call it, the dark place, whatever place it is.
Sunken place, yeah.
Sunken place. So he's no longer helpless, which means he gets an opportunity when he's untied to bludgeon the brother to what we think is death. But there's always, as in the classic horror films, he comes back from the dead for one final fight just before as he's trying to escape. But yeah, again, that symbolism, and there's a lot of symbolism in this film. Like, as we mentioned before, the housekeepers, the family, the sort of slavery auction, all these things.
Even the house itself is very old-fashioned. And,
absolutely.
You know, like in the middle of nowhere, and it feels like, you know, it could be in 12 Years a Slave.
So look, I go do my research. Apparently, a whole bunch of brothers been missing in this suburb. But it's cool. Bro, how you not scared of this, man?
Good to see another brother around here.
But we talked about sort of Rose and her switch, and we haven't really talked about his friend Rod very much,
Rod's
the TSA
great.
agent.
He's brilliant, yeah.
There's a scene, basically Rod realises something's going on. He gets the message from his friend, the photo, which kind of sends this person, Andre, off into the crazy rant. And he's like, I know that guy. And he goes to the police, and he's like, oh, I'm TSA. And actually, whilst the script was really well recognised, I think it got nominated or maybe even won an Oscar for like Best Original Script, a lot of his scenes were ad-lib, just sort of done on the fly. He really is the comic relief.
Yeah. He's the comedic relief throughout, yeah.
And it's not even like, it might feel a bit forced or a bit awful, but honestly it works so well with this film. His character is perfect for this, and it takes it beyond that sort of believability a little bit, but you at the same time you do believe it. It's like a really weird contrast.
Well, when he goes to the police, doesn't he? He phones Rose.
He tells, he knows everything and tells the police.
And he cuts the phone and he's like, I got you.
He goes into the police and he explains it to this woman, and then she gets 2 other people, 2 like other detectives in, and he tells them all, and he's like, well, I'm TSA. We've had the same training to like the detectives who are looking at him like, what? Explains that basically they're sort of kidnapping black people, brainwashing them and turning them into sex slaves, which isn't far from what is actually happening, and they just start pissing.
They just laugh, and there's a brilliant pause, isn't there? There's like a good like 30 seconds,
and she's like, "Don't you guys ever tell me I don't do anything for you?" Just like, I brought you in on this crazy person, and this is hilarious.
you know, what Jordan Peele has done here is he's flipped the script on everything. He has no right to make a thriller horror movie and then chuck in like some massive issues like that. Even in the opening scene that you talked about, it's like a black guy walking down a white, middle-class, affluent neighbourhood. How many times are we used to seeing it the other way around, where we see a white person walking down a black, kind of grotty, self-central LA neighbourhood and getting mugged? So, you know, like flipping like literally everything. All the goodies in this film are black. All the baddies in this film are white. Like, it really does push like what we're used to in cinema, and I guess from his point of view, or maybe even black cinema, from what people are, you know, used to in kind of the narrative. So yeah, it's a really brave film.
Well, dare I say as well, you might get that thing where when you think about growing up as a kid or a teenager or whatever, and seeing horror movies and wanting to make horror movies yourself or movies yourself, if you're a young kid and you see this, it just gives you more scope to play with. You could see a Nightmare on Elm Street or a film of similar nature, but then you see this and go, oh, I can bring politics and race and gender and different things into a horror movie. Because don't get me wrong, it's probably been done before, but I don't think as well as what it's done here. Like, and the beauty of this film is I think it does cross so many things. I think it's a horror, it's a comedy. It's a black comedy, and I don't mean as in race. I mean it's a black comedy. It's thriller, horror, drama, a romantic film in some ways, because their relationship is so romanticized. It covers so many bases. It's just like you said earlier. It's not just characterless slasher film. There's so much more to it, and I think that is why it's garnered so much, you know, praise. Because like me and my friends went into, let's go and see a movie. There wasn't probably a Marvel movie that month for once, so we went to the cinema, ended up seeing Get Out, and we just came away going, that was fantastic. And it's a film that stayed with me. Like, when I went to watch it in preparation for this episode, I was so looking forward to it, and also I remembered it all. Like, I remember the plot pretty much beat for beat. So watching it this time, it's like I get to enjoy it, to see all those moments of Rose and the parents and this, that and the other. And like I said, with Fight Club, you watch it a second time, different perspective on it. So it's a film that not only you can watch once, you can watch it twice. And I think it brings so much to the variety of genres that it covers.
Yeah, and before we go into your reviews and ratings, let's see what Chris Kiernan thought, who recommended this film. Chris has written, I think it's a clever take on the body snatcher genre, mixing a clever take on racism in the US from the upper middle class liberal "we're not racist" as we celebrate diversity perspective. Darkly comedic, scary and trippy all at the same time. And Chris has given it an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh, great summary, Chris, as well.
Very nice.
It really was. I like the fact he makes the point of it's not just white against black, it's white liberals. Like, if there's anyone you think you can trust, it's the white liberals in America. And obviously that's what the parents are. And yeah, as we find out in the film, they really are not to be trusted in this instance.
So I'm going for I love this movie. I'm just going to straight up give it 8 out of 10.
Solid. Yeah, so we'll come to Nigel last this time. So yeah, for me, I hadn't seen it, hadn't seen the trailer, hadn't seen anything about it, and I love this film. I thought it was incredibly watchable. Thought it tackled some massive issues through horror, shock, sometimes the black humour, like we're talking about, black comedy, and yeah, it was so refreshing and different and original. I'm going to actually agree with Chris and go for an 8.5. I'd definitely watch this film again. Nige.
Yeah, well, like we were saying, he sums it up really well, Chris, so thanks for the suggestion on this. And I really don't like giving half marks, and this is probably the most torn I've been in terms of between two numbers. This is why I do my twist and say between 2 and 3. But no, I really love this film, really enjoyed it at the cinema. Of what, like Etok has already commented on, it's a film you can go back and watch again, see it from a different perspective and get a whole new enjoyment out of it. And for me, it's easily an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Look at that.
Well, I'll tell you what, that film's done very well. And yeah, guys, let us know what you think. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Let us know what you think about Get Out. Give us your rating. or suggest a film for us to go away and watch.
The end.
We are finished talking about this now. Go away. Come back next time.